Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Chanda Ballabha Girivardhari Gopi Chanda Ballabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vandachari Yamuna Tira Vandachari Jayavana Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Chana Ballabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vandachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yesterday we finished the ninth canto, finished the last verse of the ninth canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. I don't at the moment have a 10th canto first volume in front of me, and usually somebody else on Sunday is giving the class. So since I'm here, I just picked up another book we can read from for the moment. This is the science of self-realization. These are all lectures and probably some written things that Srila Prabhupada gave us. It's actually a very good beginning. Someone wants to just starting off in Krishna consciousness. This book and the other one, the follow-up book, which is called The Journey of Self-Discovery, are very good books for some very nice information, because they all came from Srila Prabhupada's lectures. Sometimes it's Srila Prabhupada's Back to Godhead articles that were printed in Back to Godhead, different places like that. And that's where this book comes from. So I just got to read some parts of it here. Actually, maybe we can read it from the. So you can see it on the screen. Yeah. Science of Self-Realization. See? Articles in Back to Godhead magazine. That's part of it. So this is one of the articles. This is probably a lecture from Srila Prabhupada. It was printed in Back to Godhead. Learning the science of the soul. Seeing the aim of human. This section is seeing the aim of human life. According to Vedic civilization, the perfection of life is to realize one's relationship with Krishna or God. All living entities are parts and parcels of God. The parts are meant for serving the whole, just as the legs, hands, fingers, and ears are meant for serving the total body. We living entities, being parts and parcels of God, are duty-bound to serve Him. This very important Krishna conscious movement is meant to save human society from spiritual death. At present, human society is being misled. Human society is being misled by leaders who are blind, for they do not know the aim and objective of the human life, which is self-realization and the reestablishment of our lost relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the missing point. The Krishna consciousness movement is trying to enlighten human society in this important matter. According to Vedic civilization, the perfection of life is to realize one's relationship with Krishna or God. In the Bhagavad Gita, which is accepted by all authorities in transcendental science as the basis of all Vedic knowledge, we understand that not only human beings, but all living entities are parts and parcels of God. The parts are meant for serving the whole, just as the legs, hands, fingers, and ears are meant for serving the total body. We living entities, being parts and parcels of God, are duty-bound to serve Him. Actually, our position is that we are always rendering service to someone, either to our family, country, or society. If we have no one to serve, sometimes we keep a pet cat or dog and render service to it. All these factors prove that we are constitutionally meant to render service. Yet, in spite of serving to the best of our ability, we are not satisfied. Nor is the person to whom we are rendering that service satisfied. On the material platform, everyone is frustrated. The reason for this is that the service rendered is not properly directed. For example, if we want to render service to a tree, we must water the root. If we pour water on the leaves, branches, and twigs, there is little benefit. If the Supreme Personality of Godhead is served, all other parts and parcels will automatically be satisfied. Consequently, all welfare activities, as well as service to society, family, and nation, are realized by serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it is the duty of every human being to understand his constitutional position with God and to act accordingly. If this is possible, then our lives become successful. Sometimes, however, we feel challenging. We feel challenging, or we feel like being challenged to challenge somebody and say, "There is no God," or "I am God," or even "I don't care for God." But in actuality, this challenging spirit will not save us. God is there, and we can see him at every moment. If we refuse to see God in our life, then he will be present before us as cruel death. If we do not choose to see him in one feature, we will see him in another. There are different features of the Supreme Personality of Godhead because he is the original root of the entire cosmic manifestation. In one sense, it is not possible for us to escape him. We must always remember that this particular form of human life is attained after an evolution of many millions of years in the cycle of transmigration of the spirit soul. In this particular form of life, the economic question is more easily solved than in the lower animal forms. There are swine, dogs, camels, asses, and so on, whose economic necessities are just as important as ours. But the economic questions of those animals and others are solved under primitive conditions, whereas the human being is given all the facilities for leading a comfortable life by the laws of nature. Why is man given a better chance to live? Why is a man given a better chance to live than swine or other animals? And Shukovit answers that with another question. Why is the highly posted government officer given better facilities for a comfortable life than an ordinary clerk? The answer is very simple. The important officer has to discharge duties of a more responsible nature than those of an ordinary clerk. Similarly, the human being has to discharge higher duties than those of the animals who are always busy with filling their hungry stomachs. But by the laws of nature, the modern animalistic standard of civilization has only increased the problems of filling the stomach. When we approach some of the polished animals with spiritual life, polished animals means it's people that are living like animals. When we approach some of the polished animals for spiritual life, they say that they only want to work for the satisfaction of their stomachs, and that there is no necessity of inquiring about Godhead, about the Godhead. That despite their eagerness to work hard, there's always a question of unemployment and so many other impediments incurred by the laws of nature. Despite this, they still denounce the necessity of acknowledging the Godhead. They still refuse to accept God. We are given this human form of life not just to work hard like the swine or the dog, but to attain the highest perfection of life. If we do not want that perfection, then we will have to work very hard. If we do not want that perfection, then we will have to work very hard, for we will be forced by the laws of nature. In the closing days of Kali Yuga, this present age, men will have to work hard like asses for only a scrap of bread. This process has already begun, and every year the necessity for harder work for lesser wages will increase. Yet human beings are not meant to work hard like animals. And if a man fails to discharge his duties as a human being, he is forced to transmigrate to the lower species of life by the laws of nature. The Bhagavad Gita very vividly describes how a spirit soul, by the laws of nature, takes its birth and gets a suitable body and sense organs for enjoying matter in the material world. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that those who attempt but do not complete the path of approaching God, in other words, those who have failed to achieve complete success in Krishna consciousness, are given the chance to appear in the families of the spiritually advanced or financially well-to-do mercantile families. If the unsuccessful spiritual aspirants are offered such chances of noble parentage, what of those who have actually attained the required success? Therefore, an attempt to go back to Godhead, even if half finished, guarantees a good birth in the next life. This is very interesting. Just by making some endeavor to do something, something Krishna conscious, then there's so much spiritual benefit, even if we don't complete it. If we become, let's say, sorry, I lost my track. So if we're on the path of spiritual life, as we all are, obviously, then it's not something that happens all in one lifetime. We don't like fall into the material world and then suddenly in one lifetime, generally, we become fully Krishna conscious and go back to Godhead. We've actually gone and spent probably millions and billions of lifetimes, some of those in human life, and gradually come to the point where we can even take up the path of Krishna consciousness. But, so Lord Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, actually Arjuna asked him in the Bhagavad Gita, that what happens to the yogi when he's practicing yoga, but for some reason he doesn't complete the practice. He quits, he gives up, just gets entangled in the material world somehow. What happens to him? Does all his endeavor to become Krishna conscious, which is all a waste of time? And Lord Krishna, he answers that. He says that there are two general possibilities if one does not complete. he cannot complete after a short time, short amount of work of practice, short amount of time of advancing in spiritual life, or he can complete when he is very advanced, but still hasn't, but he hasn't completed, still hasn't completed at the time of death. So Lord Krishna explains, as Srila Prabhupada is explaining here, that if the human being attempts to become Krishna conscious, even if he gives it up, he'll still take a good birth. As a result of that, he'll still take a good birth. Maybe he'll become rich, or maybe he'll find himself in a better situation. Materially, he'll find himself in a better situation, even if he does not complete his Krishna consciousness. But the idea is not that we should give up Krishna consciousness and say, oh, maybe my next lifetime I'll become really nice, I'll become a really rich person, then I can enjoy. No. That is not the actual understanding here. The actual understanding is that we should try our best to become fully Krishna conscious in this lifetime, while we know what the goal is, and if somehow or other we give up the path, the practice before we complete, then Lord Krishna still gives us blessings. He may give us birth in a nice, rich or aristocratic type of a family. And why? Because if we are born in a very good family, materially speaking, a very good family, and means from the beginning of our lives, there's no struggle. There's no real struggle. There's no struggle for what am I going to eat tomorrow? What am I going to where am I going to live tomorrow? Do I have to find a new shelter, somewhere to live? These things take all your, if you're in that situation, it takes all your energy. But if one, because of his past attempt to become Krishna conscious, if he takes if he does not complete and he takes a good birth, in a good family, then from your beginning of your life, you have all opportunities, you have all facilities, all material things are taken care of. And of course, you're still going to be frustrated because it's a material world. So then you may get an opportunity to take up the path of spiritual life without all these material, without just trying to survive. Without, if our whole existence is just trying to survive from day to day, it's very hard to concentrate on anything more beyond that. So, by Lord Krishna's arrangement, even if you have not completed the path of Krishna consciousness, you can be born in a good family. Like Srila Prabhupada says, you see people who are very, I'm not sure this applies to everyone, but he gave this as an example. Someone might be very rich, very good material situation in this lifetime. Why? Because of it's a result of their past devotional activities. So that's what Lord Krishna is saying. They get a good birth. But the problem is that someone in this lifetime, someone may get some good results because of some past activities, and then it's to think, oh, I've done this, by my power I've become very rich, and I'm better than everyone else because I'm very well-to-do, and I don't need anyone, I don't need God, I don't believe in God, something like that. And then of course you can you can go the other extreme. You have everything, and then you can be next lifetime. If you still having human form of life, you can go down and become maybe a very poor person because you perhaps misused everything you had and you didn't understand. But there are those who are devotees or become devotees and are wealthy, have all material facility there, and of course they're using their material situation in Krishna service. Anyway, this is so Lord Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada is explaining here that just by attempting to become Krishna conscious and going back to Godhead, we can take birth in a very good situation materially. But of course, we don't want to. We shouldn't want to take birth again and have to and try to enjoy the material world again, because there's every opportunity, every possibility that we will become more entangled, and we'll forget everything, and we give up our spiritual life completely. So the best thing is to dedicate our entire lives up until the last moment of our lives to practice Krishna consciousness. This is the real goal. And if one, and Srila Prabhupada said many times, he said, if you chant, you get initiated, you chant your rounds, chant 16 rounds a day, follow the regular principles. You just follow this program every day and continue to do that until the end of your life. If you do that, then you will become Krishna conscious and you go back home, back to Godhead. You'll remember Krishna. If our whole lifetime has been dedicated to trying to remember Lord Krishna, then at the time of death, Lord Krishna will make sure that we do remember him. And if we remember only Krishna at the time of death, then we go back home, back to Godhead. So that's the program. Anyway, let's just continue on with the reading from Srila Prabhupada's words here. Birth in a well-to-do family solves the problems of having to find sufficient food from the beginning of life. Later, a comparatively easier and more comfortable way of life can be led. Being so situated, one has a good chance to make progress in spiritual realization. But as ill luck would have it, due to the influence of the present age of Kali, which is full of machines and mechanical people, the sons of the wealthy are misguided for sense enjoyment, and they forget the good chance they have for spiritual enlightenment. Oh, that's what I just said. Therefore, nature by her laws is setting fires in these golden homes. It was the golden city of Lanka under the regime of the demoniac Ravana that was burned to ashes. That is the law of nature. So, exactly what I just said. We may, due to past pious activities, we may get a very good material situation, but if we forget about God and dedicate a life only to sense gratification, become in that lifetime, then we can lose everything. In fact, not only do we lose everything, but we may degrade ourselves so much. Srila Prabhupada tells the story of. He said there was a saintly person who traveled around. So he went to different people and he gave blessings. So he found a prince, the son of a king, who was living a very sensual life. And he says, He says, "I'm blessing you that you should live forever." And then he went to a brahmachari who was practicing austerities, and he said, "You should not live. You should. It blessed you to die immediately." And then he went to a butcher, and he says, "You should not live and you should not die. Either way, living and dying, neither one." And then he went to a devotee of Krishna, and he told him, "You can live or you can die. It's all the same. You're living engaged in the Lord's service. When you die, then you'll continue to engage the Lord's service." So the explanation of this story was, he's blessing the prince that you should live. You should live forever. You should not die. Why? Because in this lifetime, because the prince is not a devotee. He's not a devotee. He simply takes every opportunity for material enjoyment. He has money, he has power, he has position, and he uses it completely to engage in sense gratification and forget everything else in life. So it means a lot of sinful activities. So he said. So the blessing was, you live, you continue, you just keep living, because when you die, you're going to be in big problem. That was the conclusion. The brahmachari was being trained up by the spiritual master to follow regular principles, practice the goal of life like that. He was very austere, and because he was so strictly following the instructions of his spiritual master, if he died at that moment, he would go back to the spiritual world. So he blessed him in that way. You can die immediately. Then the butcher. So the butcher, he says, "Do not live and do not die. Do not live and do not die." Because living, the butcher, what is he doing? He's all day he's killing animals and cutting up their bodies and selling them, making meat. All day he's doing this horrible activity. It's a ghastly activity. It's killing and blood and everything. So your life, so living, your life is hell. And when you die, your life is going to be very hellish because of all the sinful activities that you've engaged in during this lifetime. So he says, you should not live and you should not die. And to the devotee, he says, you can live or you can die. That's up to you. It doesn't matter, because you're fully engaged in the Lord's service during your lifetime, and at whatever point you leave this body, you die, then you will continue to engage in the Lord's service, because you go back to the spiritual world where you're always engaged in the Lord's service. So, and of course, this is kind of our position, or should be our position in practicing Krishna consciousness. We are living engaged in devotional service, and at the time of giving up this body, if we continue to engage strictly in the path of devotional service, then we have every opportunity to go back to the spiritual world and engage eternally in devotional service to the Lord. This article is actually long. Maybe I should. Any questions or comments? Okay, so then we will end here with today's class. Tomorrow, then we should, if we find the right volume, we'll start on the first canto, not first canto, 10th canto, first chapter, first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.